Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Road Weather Spotlight webinar series. Today's topic is preparing for the winter weather season. My name is Said Ahnaf Murshid, and I'll help facilitate today's webinar. As a quick reminder, at National Operations Center of Excellence, we offer a variety of resources to support the transportation systems management and operation community. You can go to NOCO's website to browse through links for TISMO resources and news. Previous webinar recordings and case studies can be accessed from there. Now, I will cover a few logistics for today's webinar. We are recording this webinar and the recording will be available on NOCO's website. All the attendees are encouraged to stay engaged by using the Q&A feature for questions and chat feature for comments. These are both located on the bottom of your screen. We have a question and answer session at the end of the presentation, so if you have any questions, we encourage you to enter them in the Q&A areas as they come to your mind at any time. Also, please feel free to enter your name and agency in the chat to say hello to your peers. Now I'm handing it off to Jeremy, who's from Federal Highway Administration Office of Operations. Jeremy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Anaf, and thanks to NOCO for being a great sponsor here and allowing us to use this platform for our Road Weather Spotlight series. So good afternoon, from the East Coast, and welcome to our Road Weather Spotlight series. This presentation is titled Preparing for the Winter Weather Season. As Anaf said, my name is Jeremy McGuffey. I am currently serving as the Road Weather Management Program Manager for Federal Highway Administration in the Office of Operations. With that said, we will get started. Before we do, I have a couple of disclaimers to go over. Essentially, this says the presentation was created and is being co-presented by both the Federal Highway Administration and an outside entity. The views and opinions expressed in this presentation are the presenters and do not necessarily reflect those of Federal Highway Administration or the U.S. Department of Transportation. The contents do not necessarily reflect the official policy of the USDOT. The U.S. government does not endorse products or manufacturers. Trademarks or manufacturers' names appear in this presentation only because they are considered essential to the objective of the presentation. They are included for informational purposes only and are not intended to reflect a preference, approval, or endorsement of any one product or entity. Except for the statutes and regulations cited, the contents of this presentation do not have the force and effect of law and are not meant to bind the states or the public in any way. This presentation is intended only to provide information regarding existing requirements under the law or agency policies. With that said, today's topics are actually going to be from a few of you out there in the community. We have a wide slate of presenters here. We're going to kick things off today with Darcy Bullock from Purdue. He's going to be presenting on Purdue and Indiana Department of Transportation's Winter Operations Dashboard. Then we'll move on to John Haberman with Texas A&M Transportation Institute, presenting on training for winter maintenance operations. I think his presentation is actually titled Maturing Your Winter Operations. And then we also have Eric Guillot with the National Weather Service presenting on some of the products that they are responsible for regarding winter weather operations. And then I'll do a wrap up and offer some thoughts for you. So with that said, I am going to pass things off to Darcy. Darcy, are you there?
I am there, and Gerard is going to start sharing the screen.
While Gerard is sharing, I'm going to read off a quick bio for Darcy, just to give everybody a insight into who Darcy is. So presenting will be a group from Purdue. I'll let them introduce themselves, but Darcy Bullock is kind of leading things over there. He serves as professor of civil engineering. He's Lyles family professor of civil engineering at Purdue University, and he serves as the director of the institution's Joint Transportation Research Program. You may have also heard it known as JTRP. Bullock is registered professional engineer in Indiana with 30 years of experience working closely with academia, transportation agencies, and private sector partners in transportation systems and big data. The floor is yours, Darcy.
Thanks, Jeremy.
You can stop sharing. I can share my screen.
Awesome. So Gerard is going to have that video playing. So Jeremy, thank you for the introduction. I'm really just the warm-up act for the cool things the team has done. Let me just preface this by saying, and Gerard's going to click through this video, and you can see actually one of the things that we did with you, Jeremy, and you were in Indiana, is we've worked about merging National Weather Service Doppler data, connected vehicle data, and the telematics on vehicle trucks. And I'll talk, the team will talk a little bit more about that as we go through, but the time lapse that Gerard had up there on the screen was the team, what they'd put together from a February storm coming through and showing the impact that it had on the Indiana interstates. And then those blue lines that you see up there are the winter operation trucks, salt, NDOT salt and snow trucks. Next slide. So with that, like I said, I'm just the warm-up act. Really, Guillot, Gerard, and Rahul have done the cool work. This is a consummate remote presentation. Guillot's up in Chicago at ITS Midwest. I'm in Indy, and Rahul and Gerard are holding down the fort. So over to you guys. Guillot in Chicago with Guillot.
Thanks, Darcy. So I'll just introduce myself. I'm Guillot Matthew, research engineer with the team. So what I'll do mainly is go through some of the data sources, the main data sources that we're going to present in this presentation, and then I'll hand it over to Gerard and Rahul to walk you through some of the cool case studies. So next slide. So the main data that we are using in this presentation is coming from connected vehicles. And when I mean connected vehicles, it's basically anonymized waypoint data that's coming in from passenger cars. So we're getting geoposition with a lot of attributes such as timestamp, speed, and heading. And the spatial fidelity is around 3 meters, 0 to 3 meters, and reporting frequency is close to 3 seconds to 5 seconds. Next slide, please. So when we are getting data in like close to 3 seconds, we are starting to talk about big data. So on average, for a month in Indiana, we receive around 15 billion records, and to date, all the data that we have in a database is in upwards of 350 billion data points. So that's huge data. And on the right, you can see a visualization that the team has built, which shows like where this data is. So mainly during the peak hours, you can see the entire road network lit up, just giving indications on the present conditions of the road. Next slide. We're also going to show some data from connected trucks. So this is very similar to the connected vehicle from passenger cars, but instead this is coming from commercial trucks. So you can see the footprint of this data is a bit lower compared to the passenger cars. I would say every day we're receiving close to 500 million data points from passenger cars, but over here it's only around 200 million. And the reporting frequency is close to, is also an upwards of 10 seconds. Next slide. And this is a visualization showing like just a minute what the connected truck data looks like for the entire nation. So as you can see, this is data rich, but information poor. And what we want to do is, develop, tools to extract key performance metrics and insights to support data-driven decisions. Next slide. And one way we do that is by creating tools to help us extract these performance metrics. And one of the main tools that we're going to show today and we're going to use a lot is something called the traffic impact heat map. So this is basically a time-space diagram color-coded by the speeds. So in this case, in the bottom, this is a visualization that Rahul did for the team. So you can see on the bottom of the x-axis, this is your time going from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. And on your y-axis, this is the location of every single vehicle. So in this case, they are linear reference to the mile markers on I-69. And each trajectory is a vehicle passing through. So on the right side, you can see the map on I-69. And these are kind of put together in such a way that they align exactly with the paths. So you can see a vehicle entering at mile marker 245, and then around mile marker 250, we can see the speed slowing down. So again, speeds, green is good, red is bad. So 65 miles per hour and greater is what green is. And then red, that's when, and the purple, that's when we are having like very slow speed. So in this case, you can see all those vehicles slowing down at mile marker 250. And that's because this is a work zone where all the vehicles slow down. And then after exiting the work zone, they kind of speed up. And from this, we're able to extract a lot of performance metrics, such as like where exactly are the work zone and the limits of the work zone, and also like some of the delays, what's that time duration that we are seeing some of the delays. Next slide, please. And this is an example where we are looking over a day's time period. And one of the metrics that we use a lot is called the congestion ticker. And the congestion ticker is the miles of the interstate operating below 45 miles per hour, which kind of indicates possible congestion happening on the interstate. So in this case, you can see there's an incident that's happening around 2 o'clock, between 2 o'clock and 6 o'clock in the evening. And we can now look at like, hey, what was the impact of this incident? And in this case, we're seeing a peak of 7 miles of congestion just before 4 p.m. and after 4 p.m. So these tools help us to derive some of these insights of the road conditions that's happening. Next slide, please. And the sample penetration of this data, what we've seen and the studies that we've done in Indiana is roughly 1 to 5%. So roughly 1 in every 20 vehicles, we are getting data from those vehicles reporting what the road conditions are. Next slide, please. So the data, it's really good that the data suggests one thing, but we also want to know, like, ground truth or have eyes on the road to see, like, hey, is this exactly, are the ground conditions reflecting what we see in the data? So one of the ways we've been doing this was using the ITS cameras, the fixed ITS cameras that the DOTs maintains. But one of the issues is that they're fixed and they can mostly, they're only available on interchanges or exits. So if an incident occurs right around the vicinity of that area, it's well and good. We have eyes on the road. But what if something happens between these exits or interchanges where we don't have like good coverage? And that's where these commercial vehicle dash cam images become very powerful. This is a new source of information that we've been collecting and ingesting. So these are images that's coming from dash cams of commercial trucks passing through interstates and other roadways. Next slide, please. And this map just shows like the coverage of this data that's available over 12 hours. I think roughly around we are able to pull data from 33,000 trucks a day. So that itself is like very powerful to see some of those ground conditions and kind of relate that with some of the data that we are seeing. Next slide, please. All right, so again, if you have any questions, please do put them in the chat. Looking forward to the Q&A. Next slide. All right, with that, I'll hand it over to Jarraj to walk you through some of the cool case studies that we've been able to build with this data.
Awesome. Thanks, Tijo. So like Tijo mentioned, using all of these different data sets, we'll be looking at some case studies from the most recent winter season. So I'll cover some slides on a storm in Indiana on February 16th and what were the impacts of that storm on roadway mobility. And then I'll hand it over to Rahul for some selected national examples from the same winter. So going back to the video that was playing at the start, this is a visualization which combines a lot of the data sets we use here. So it includes telematics data from NCDOT snowplows. You can see almost 500 snowplows out on the road here at about 4 p.m. on February 16th. You can see the weather data in the background showing almost 80 to 90% of the state is covered in snowy conditions and the rest is in rainy and snowy mix. And you can see connected vehicle speeds along the major interstate highways here. So you can see most of the Indianapolis area is congested. Speeds are in red as well as some other portions of the state. And now I'll step through the major interstates in Indiana, so I-64, and see what the impact of this winter storm looked like on each roadway. So I-64 on Friday, February 16th, at around 5 p.m., you can see a little bit of congestion starting to build up and dissipating around 8 p.m. But as we go north, where the peak of the storm impact was observed, we see I-65 near the Greater Indianapolis region. Nearly the entire section was congested. On the bottom, you also see ITS cameras, which give really good coverage around the state and showing what conditions were like. Going further north to I-69, we see similar roadway impacts. I-70, we see very low visibility and snow-covered roads. The white sections we see here on the heat map, like DJ explained, those are roadway closures, so when no vehicles are passing through, that's what the white no data section indicates. I-74, again, similar impacts, but these visuals like these, we help us to show how the impact of a storm varies across the state, varies across districts, and varies along a simple route as well. So 170 miles of I-74, but if we see the first 30 miles, little to no impacts, but as we go further east, the impacts start to build up. I-94, which is in the northern part near Lake Michigan, again, seeing about 10 to 15 miles of queuing on that day. And I-465, which is the center of the state where we saw the most impact at around 4 to 5 p.m. We see the entire route is almost red routing, so speeds operating between below 45 miles per hour. And then diving into just one particular route, so I-65, we want to showcase some visuals and dashboards that highlight the various data sources we're using. So what we see here is a two-directional heat map, northbound on the top and southbound on the bottom. We see the impacts of the storm, and then we see two smaller plots, which is highlighting the number of snowplows that were deployed on each of these routes. So about 30 snowplows on the northbound side and 40 on the southbound for this hour. And if I flip between these slides, on the next slide, you see these blue lines, which indicate the path that a snowplow followed when it was patrolling or treating or maintaining this route. So the blue lines indicate the snowplow movement, and the gray circles on top indicate locations where we have a dash camera image available from the snowplow telematics, which gives us a real-time view of what the snowplow is seeing as it's treating to the road and what roadway conditions are like. And then on the next slide, what I was showing earlier was connected vehicle data. Now we can have a similar visual, but with National Weather Service weather data. So this is high resolution rapid refresh weather temperature data. So we see as the storm rolls in how temperatures are dropping. Again, how that relates to snowplow deployments, how that relates to precipitation. So we see the storm front passing through from about just before noon on Friday, February 16th to the end of the day. And one final data set we're showing here is roadway friction. So this is, again, one of the new enhanced data sets we're using in the analysis. And this helps provide an independent validation on the real-time roadway conditions, what friction is like, how drivers are experiencing the roadway in this winter storm. And again, all of this can be correlated to the snowplow telematics, the CV data, the weather data to provide a more holistic example. And this is, Jeremy might actually recognize this example, but this is from February 2021, where there was a tandem plowing operation on I-94. And this is one of those case studies where we used snowplow telematics and connected vehicle data to see the impacts of the plowing operation and how those timings or the durations could be tweaked to minimize those impacts. So this was what I covered was an example from the Indiana winter storms, but now I'll hand it over to Rahul for a more national outlook.
Thank you, Jairaj. What I'm going to do is show few national case studies. Jairaj has taken a deeper dive into Indiana case and how different heat maps are interpreted. However, each of these tools or dashboards are scalable, and that's what I'm going to show some of these heat maps for a national different states, and combine these with truck dash cam that Gijo had talked earlier. Just a quick recap, we are seeing more than 30,000 unique trucks, and you can see layout of these, where these trucks are, and these are the trucks that are able to give us images on road every 1 second when they're actively running the routes. Quick numbers on trucks, obviously weekends, there is less number of trucks active, and we are seeing about at peak 30 million images being generated every instance. And to look particularly how many trucks or how many images we are going to get, this is an example of Interstate 65. On weekdays, we can say roughly every hour or every other hour, you can get an image or a road condition. Now, stepping through first, California. Now, we have seen several of these heat maps. Most of you probably have started already reading some of the insights from these heat maps, but we can see conditions were good up until Thursday around 9 a.m. and we see a storm hit mile marker 145 to north up until the border to Nevada on California Interstate I-80. We see traffic conditions slow down through Thursday and Friday, but complete closure on Saturday and Sunday. And on Monday, we see some traffic back on around noon, and traffic conditions were back to normal about after 120 hours. And we confirmed these. This was the blizzard that hit California. What I'm going to do is also show how in those early hours when the trucks were still active, we were able to see what the conditions were. Now, these tell us few things. If the storm is really active, what are the pavement conditions right at that instance? Just to explain some of these images, on the top left, you can also see a Purdue ID of each of these trucks, state where this is right now, interstate, direction of travel, mile marker, timestamp instance, and speed at instantaneous speed of the truck. Next, Utah. Relatively, the impact was mild compared to California, but we see the storm moving south starting around noon near mile marker 350. If we look at the slope of these, we can say roughly the storm was moving at 40 miles per hour along I-15. We can see the vehicles moving north had to slow down as they were hitting that storm. Some of the vehicles that were traveling southbound were traveling with that storm. And then there was relatively smaller, more regional from mile marker 125 to 225, another impact overnight on Sunday. I'm going to show three truck dash cam images just before that first storm, just after, and active at night. So we can see no snow, some snow had fallen, the traffic condition was back to normal, and some active snow conditions. Now the first one, second one, Sunday morning, we see snow had fallen, the conditions are back to normal, and then overnight when there was some active snow reducing the traffic speeds. Next, Colorado, I-70. Similarly, we can see some impact on Tuesday as well as on Saturday, the March 2nd. Similarly, I'm going to show two instances now, just before and after. This was before and this was after. We can also stitch several of these truck dash cam images to get conditions across the interstate when there are varying conditions or active snowplow operations ongoing on interstate. Next, Missouri. Now, this was relatively a small, probably an hour probably 2 to 3 hours winter storm that I hit on Friday, February 16th. However, it caused an incident. So when you're seeing those lighter yellow, orange, red, the traffic is slow, but it's still moving. But when we start seeing that pink, that's when the traffic speeds are below 15 miles per hour, and in most cases, stuck traffic. So that is indicative of something major incident happening on interstate that's causing these slowdowns. Now we see that instance right here had caused about 20-mile long queue in both direction of travel for about 23 hours. So even after the storm had passed away, we see those congested conditions. Now we were also able to get the truck dash cam images and see what was actually happening. And we see that truck spun there, causing the stuck traffic. And we also confirm the same with the news article. Just going back, the truck dash cam was able to verify some of the active conditions, what was happening out there, but the traffic speed heat map, these kind of dashboard tools help us inform exactly when the conditions were back to normal, how long the queues were forming, and see the impact in different direction of travels as well. Next, I'm going to show two quick examples. This was New York and New Jersey I-95. And we are also seeing some active snow plowing operation ongoing on the George Washington Bridge out there. And one last example from Indiana, I mentioned about quickly getting conditions during an active snowstorm. And this was one of the case in Indiana on Friday, February 16th. Within an hour, we were able to see that, okay, the snowstorm has hit, but there is a dark pink color. That means there was an incident. We were able to pull these images, and we can see images that are within the minutes of this incident. The vehicle had run off before there was any response to this incident. Now, just one last comment before I hand it off to Darcy for overview. As I mentioned, there are about, at any moment, 30,000 active trucks. It's not possible to monitor each of those trucks constantly. That's where these tools and heat maps come in handy to pinpoint the locations and areas that you want to look at for these images, and then you look at some of the truck dash camera images. With that, I'll hand it off to Darcy to summarize.
Thank you, Rahul. Awesome. Hey, Jeremy, I think you'll see we've come a long way since we started out with dash cams on the trucks that you deployed in Indiana. Rahul talked about pulling in from 60,000 trucks across the US. I think the key message from this talk is Rahul and team demonstrated that these techniques scale on a nationwide basis. So although we developed them in Indiana, I think the tools that Rahul just went through, not only the connected vehicle, the connected truck, but also those dash cams and the Doppler data scale. So as we start thinking about it, just visiting with John Corbin a few weeks ago at USDOT, and there's starting to be interest in corridor mobility across multiple states. And I think we're now at that point where we can do that. And I guess I'll end with my favorite line I always just like to say about connected vehicles. Connected vehicles know more than we know about our roads many times. And I think that's particularly true when we span multiple states. So this might be a good chance to pause for questions, Jeremy.
Yeah, sure thing, Darcy. And thank you guys for the presentation. It was really insightful. We have time maybe for 1 or 2 questions before Darcy hops off. His team will be on though through the presentation, and then after everybody's done presenting today, we'll have time for more questions for them. So 1 or 2 questions. If anybody wants to drop one in the chat there, we can ask Darcy.
Jeremy, this is Anaf. We have a couple of questions in the Q&A pod. I think one of them is, how are you getting access to the video? I think the Clay Adams asked the question. I think he meant for the video that has been presented in the presentation.
Okay, so we can absolutely we have some of these videos on electronic repository at Purdue. So Rahul or Gerard will paste in the chat the link to those. And also there's an accompanying paper that describes those. And if the question was regarding the dash cam, we have a paper coming out in the next week or 2 on that if somebody puts a query into the or puts their email into the chat, we'll make sure we send that to you. And
Yeah, Clay clarified that he was asking getting access to the dash cams from the trucks.
okay, so the dash cam for trucks, so that one is pending. It's a company called Vision. Again, we're not endorsing any particular vendor, Jeremy, but we have a paper that describes that, and it'll be out in a couple of weeks. We'll send that off.
Got it. Thank you. Darcy, I think we have a couple more questions in here. We have one. What is the source of friction data? Is it available to the public?
Yeah, so the friction data we're getting from a company called Neura Dynamics, and they are eager to market that in the US. It's a relatively modest penetration right now from Volkswagen Audis, but we're very excited about it, and I would strongly encourage other states to pursue it, because ultimately we want to see a market space in that so that the OEMs continue to grow that market. And quite simply, if you think about your cars, when the ABS or traction control comes on, it knows when there's a friction problem. So what we're doing is harnessing some of that data. And if people want, we can put we got a paper on that. We can follow up if people put query in the chat on that, we'll send that off to them.
Yep. We'll go ahead and move on, Darcy, and I'll let you get out of here, but we do have some interest in the chat there, so we'll make sure that you get everybody's contact info. There are a couple more questions, and we'll make sure that those get addressed at the end of the presentation here, but we do have to move on just in interest of everybody's time.
No problem.
Darcy, I appreciate it. The rest of you guys from Purdue, I appreciate it. Next up, we'll have John Haberman from Texas A&M Institute. John Haberman joined the TTI Research and Implementation Division as the lead mobility coordinator on the I-35 Mobility Coordination Project. John moved to the Waco area to start an I-35 project office for TTI. In his role as mobility coordinator, John has worked to advance traffic and work zone safety initiatives such as automated portable smart traffic monitoring systems, variable speed limits in work zones, dynamic speed display signs, comparative travel time signs, and the dynamic late lane merge. John regularly engages a breadth of stakeholders along the I-35 corridor to keep elected officials, travelers, business owners, and property owners current on construction activities and the potential impacts those activities could have on day-to-day operations. John, I'll pass things over to you if you want to share your screen.
Let me unmute here and make sure everything's okay. I was trying to, sorry, Jeremy, I didn't know what bio you had on me, but for this topic, it entails some of the experience I had while I was at Purdue, working with local governments, plus the recent NCHRP project 0618, developing a guide for snow and ice control. And so that's part of the reason why I'm here today. We won't talk much about work zones today. I want to say hello. I went through a quick scan of the attendees. Hello to Paul Pisano, Mark DeVries, and Karen Stipik. Y'all were instrumental in the development of my career, so I hope that some of this is not boring to you. but across 133 attendees, Jeremy wanted to give a spectrum of information that we can deliver to you because we never know where different individuals are either in their career or in accepting new positions within their organization and what that means in terms of winter operations. So we're going to talk about maturing winter operations. And I'm John Haberman here in the heart of Texas. That is Waco, is fondly called the heart of Texas. On TV, there's a famous couple that does a fixer-upper. So if you ever find yourself in the Waco area, please contact me and I'll give you the ins and outs of some of that and the enjoyment of the parts of Waco that make this quite the livable community. And let's see if I can do my change. So why are we here today?
John, we cannot see your screen.
Oh,
Do you
good.
mind?
Then that way I can get done a lot quicker. See, where are you? There y'all are. Did we do the share? Share that one.
This is the presenter's view.
Right. Share this one. And hit share. There's my highlighter.
That's perfect. Thank you, John.
Okay. So why are we here today? Or what's the need for this session? Well, typically, whether it be a webinar or a conference, this is what we typically did. We all showed up and we signed up with our pencils and we turned in a form and someone either typed or wrote our name on a name badge, and then we went off to learn. And then we had these things called computers, and computers were very local. The only thing that was ever plugged in back then was the computer into the wall for electricity. As you heard from the previous speakers, they're talking about cloud data, Google Drive, many gigabytes of data that they're turning into information. And then now we have over 130 people logged in today, and none of you traveled anywhere except maybe to your desk at home or to the desk at your office. So things change with time, with advancements, and that's similar with winter operations. Is we know more about material application, we know more about a person's endurance. We know more how computers and GPS and all those new technologies can impact us. So we have webinars like this to show you where things are going, as you saw in the previous slide, and then where we've been and how to help you get to where things are going as well. And so we call this a maturing of your operations. And just like a child matures to a teenager to an adult, the hope with some of this encouragement of this presentation is that winter operations will be matured as you go along. There are, at any given year, there are numerous things that you can implement into your agency. And today we're specifically talking about winter maintenance. There's a new piece of equipment you can buy, an update of an old policy that you found in a drawer, trying out a new material, trying out a liquid mixed with a solid, trying the liquid by itself. There's a whole host of things, but the little bit that I've learned in my career, that any agency, whether that be a local community or a state community or state agency, can only advance so many things in 1 year because of the bandwidth of their staff, the expertise of the staff, the resources, and the competing initiatives outside of winter maintenance that may need attention as well. As well. So our hope is that you can follow a roadmap and go on this journey with us this afternoon as to how hopefully you have one or two ideas that you take away today that says, hey, I would like to advance this, because if it's being talked about today, that means someone's doing it. And if you need help being connected to someone doing it, then you have the contact information of all the speakers here. So please get in touch with us. And here's our topics today. We'll do the weather, the policies, levels of service, personnel, equipment, materials, innovation, and safety. And these words make for a great outline for winter operations. So the first thing you want to know is know your weather. Maybe you just moved to an area. Maybe you, like I said, you moved into a position where the only time you worried about weather was whether you take an umbrella or a jacket, and or whether you stay inside or go outside. So where are you in the scope of the world? What's your terrain like? Do you have a lot of trees? Do you have a lot of flat land? Do you have nearby waterways? Do you have hills? What's your wind look like? And what's the prominent direction of your wind? And what's the yearly averages of the snowfall, rain, and sunny days? You know, just kind of lay out what do you typically have on a given year. And here is a Midwest to Mid-Atlantic up to New England type snow map, and know your annual average snowfall. You could go to the NOAA website, and there is plenty of historical data there. I'm sure if you're connected, if you're a state agency, you may even have a statewide weather data package that you can get access to. And I'm sure the weather stations across your area would be happy to let you know what's going on. And so it's just like you see there in the middle of the screen is Indiana. There's different colors. You know, there's heavy red up near Lake Michigan, and then it tapers off as you get closer to Kentucky. So just saying I'm in Indiana, or I'm in Ohio, or I'm in Nevada is not enough to tell you. Weather is a very local, regional type event, and that's something you just might want to make yourself familiar with to get started. Given, what we learned in school was given required solution. So what are you given? You're given weather, and learn that first so you can move forward with how you're going to resource your department. And before you go, do you have a policy or plan in place? Like I said, this is very high level. There's a lot of resources out there. Again, if you want to contact us after this, we could help give you templates and some other things. But Jeremy and the others asked to fly at a high level today to keep it short. A snow policy and plan. Essentially, it says who's in charge, what's going to happen when certain things take place. Oftentimes, a snow event is part of a local emergency response plan. Emergency response plans include weather events like tornadoes, snow, fire events. It could unfortunately include maybe an explosion, a leaky gas line, a multi-block fire, anything that's going to take heavy resources in order to keep the public safe and the community vibrant. And then also the policy would hopefully include dividing your agency into either districts, sections, or areas. And then if you do that, then you could equally or just appropriately allocate resources around your region as to how many trucks need to be allocated to the northern part of the county versus the southern part, or to the eastern part of the district versus the western part of the district. How remote are you? Do you want to set up outposts of materials that a truck can access so they don't have to deadhead back into headquarters? Do you want to set up small outposts with little buildings that have heat and break areas for drivers who drive remotely or in remote locations for a long time and need a little bit of a rest? And then how are you going to inform your elected officials, both local and state level? and then have your in-house legal representatives overview the policy so that it gets adopted by the elected officials. And then it also could address what kind of agreements you have. Often roads are political boundaries. So if a certain road, State Highway 1 is the furthest from your office, maybe you ask the northern district to say, hey, could you take this for us? Or hey, city, I know this is a county road, but could we work out an agreement here, either financially or in-kind services, where you go, for the good of the public, you go ahead and plow it while you're in that area. So there's some of those agreements that could be in your policy as well. So just, and then we consider this time period of life the pre-storm activity, pre-season activity. So what are you doing now? The policy, the plans would be talking about some of those steps. What kind of activities are being addressed during a storm, and then after a storm or even after the season, what's happening with y'all. And there's partnerships, like I alluded to in the previous slide with the political boundaries. You could communicate long-term closures, as some of the data in the previous slide show, just the white, like why was that white? Because the road got closed. So when that road got closed, did that crew notify their supervisor, and did their supervisor notify their home office, and did City Hall notify the media to say, hey, this is what's going on? I talked about how innovations and best practices are hard to advance all at once. So partnerships help y'all talk to each other and go, hey, how did that work for you this year? I heard you bought mag chloride. Did that work okay? Or did you apply too much? Or could you tell me more about that? So you could use each other's experimentation and development of best practices, and that would shorten your learning curve to advance to your next initiative. And then we've talked a lot about freight already in the short 45 minutes. And then if freight haulers get information about winter storms and closed road and slow moving roads in advance, then they have an opportunity to pull off somewhere. One is they could save fuel from just sitting and not moving. Two is in its simplistic form, I know there's some details in the law, but the truck's running and the driver's in the seat, the trucker's losing hours, and that counts against their hauling hours or their drive time. So if a trucker could pull off before they get stuck in winter weather, that would give them more rest, and then also allow them to have hours after the storm passes to continue to drive. And for bigger agencies like the state agencies, you could share your information with traffic management centers and advertise for each other across a state. And then, that just improves consistency of traveler information across the region. And then the policy, when it's being written, it helps you all decide as an agency what's going to be our level of service. How many miles do we hope to plow in an hour? Some people talk about bare pavement. Is that unrealistic or not realistic? Pounds, gallons of materials that will be applied, number of trucks, number of hours. And some of these performance measures, when they're properly tracked, they could be something that do get sent over to the media, and the media could say, hey, ABC snowplows are out this afternoon, and as of now, 2 tons of salt have been placed on the road to help melt the snow, and 54 miles have been plowed over and cleaned, and so they will continue such activities throughout the night. So it shows a proactiveness on the agency's part. And then you have your road classifications. Which ones do you want to prioritize first? As you can see, the emergency and the hospital. Are you maintaining access to some of those type services in your community? And then, as I mentioned, there's the geometry. If you have a lot of trees and the sun's not getting through, you're going to know that maybe some of those roads are going to melt a little slower. And how conscientious do you want to be of applying salt when you're close to bodies of water. I mean, you don't want to increase the saline levels of certain bodies of water excessively, so you might want to manage that a little bit. And then your bridges, where the air is on top and bottom, and they have a tendency to freeze a little sooner. And then your personnel, this time of year, you could send them through some refresher and some training. There may be some new employees that haven't plowed snow to the level that your agency plows. Some active recruiting. You could do some contractor recruiting. Other agency employees. I remember there was one agency that used their bus drivers because if the roads are bad enough to plow, oftentimes school gets closed for the day. So then all the bus drivers, if they get cross-trained to be drivers, and they could kind of help when regular full-time road crews need rest. The supplemental labor could come in and kind of keep operations moving until they come back in 8 or 10 hours later. And then contractors are often available. Landscape contractors and such that have pickups and plows could kind of help with smaller areas of your agency. And then is your equipment, is it well maintained? Is it up and ready to go? Have you inserted your spreaders into the beds yet? Have you turned them on? Have you calibrated them? Have you measured specific gravity content of your brine maker? Do you have all your MSDS sheets in line for the new shipments of other salts or other liquids that may be coming into your yard? And then just to make sure everything's ready to go. And then does your system of cleaning, is it up and running? Do you have a place to clean them? Do you have a place to collect the wash water such that it just doesn't wash out into the storm water? Can you collect it so that it gets into the sanitary sewer system and gets properly treated, and some of those type of things? And as y'all know, you see a motor grader there. The motor grader could have a V plow and help on deeper sections. So just getting your equipment in order and make sure it's ready to go. And then once it's loaded down, sometimes a good practice is fill it full of salt, get the spreader in there, get the plows on it. And it might be a sunny day, and just tell your drivers, go out and run your routes. See what might have changed since you were last out there. Hit the brakes and remember what it feels like to have that much load behind you, and how much longer it will take once the pavement starts getting wet and a little icy. So just have them run around a little bit and get into practice again as to what all that feels like. And then your material storage, and what you decide you're going to be using, what you're going to be making versus what you're going to have be delivered. There's some things with salt bids that you get your salt bids in. Do all the salt suppliers know how much you're having, how much you're getting delivered right now versus how much you're going to have on hold for future delivery, and then what's your internal testing like, so you can make sure you're getting good material and pure material. And then the researchers at Purdue did not highlight the one thing I thought they might highlight is the geofencing. I know there's been some practice in Indiana and elsewhere where the truck is geolocated with the GPS unit, and when that vehicle gets into a certain area, the brine turns on automatically, and then the brine gets spread across the bridge while the drivers are driving. And then once the driver gets far enough away from the bridge, the brine automatically shuts off, and the driver keeps going with the other business that they're doing. This is not too different than sometimes what farmers do with their big John Deeres and some other things, where they have their soil maps and they have tanks of liquid, and the tractor starts going, and the amount of fertilizer and nitrogen that gets sprayed is based off of how moist the land is, what type of soil condition is, and it becomes a very exact science. So a lot of the farming community technologies is starting to come over now to the winter maintenance activities, where we can be more exacting, drones and LiDAR. LiDAR could be used to measure your piles so you know how much you have remaining. And that could carry over into your summer operations as well if you want to measure your aggregate piles and get a volume. I showed this picture. This is out of Iowa, West Des Moines, a good friend of Mr. DeVries. They built a salt brine making system, but the trucks pull in and it looks like a fueling station, but it's actually a brine station. So they put in their little nozzle and fill up their brine tanks in their trucks, and then they hook it back up and then they take off. And so the machine knows how much it dispensed and then know what truck took how much, and then they can kind of keep track of their material usage as well. And then safety, that the whole road you see ends with safety. If I were to run back to the map that I showed you earlier, you want to make sure there's enough personal protective gear for the drivers. The policy could talk about what is the driver supposed to do or have inside the cab. What's the driver supposed to do if they get stuck? What's the driver supposed to do if material gets clogged up and it's no longer coming out? It addresses the personnel training. What do you do with a stranded citizen? Equipment, gets icy and it malfunctions, and what happens if it malfunctions and you're 10 miles from headquarters? And then also the safe handling of materials. We may think of salt as something benign, but you don't want to breathe in too much salt dust. You don't want to get too much, you don't want mag chloride slushing around on your skin and some of those type of things. So just understanding how the handling of the materials are. And then always remember your public outreach. And is there someone inside your agency or inside the government headquarters where you could do social media posts? We've all learned a lot lately that posting somewhere is very helpful, and the public is beginning to expect it and to see it. So if you create social media pages, make sure they stay updated and it doesn't talk about the winter of 2022 and it's already 2024. So if you're going to create something, make sure it stays updated, and maybe even be proactive and call the media this time of year. Some agencies used to would call the media in the fall, and they would come out and interview the supervisors, show all the trucks with the spreaders inserted, show the material piles, and reassure the public that, hey, we're ready for winter. And that's where I'm at, and I hope I stayed within time there, Jeremy. So any questions or comments that may have come across?
Yeah, I think we're a little over, but like I said, we'll have time for some Q&A at the end. We'll make some time there. I appreciate it, John. I think that was a good overview of your presentation. If anybody is interested in the longer version, feel free to reach out to John and he can get that over to you. We'll move on now to our next presenter, Eric Guillot with the National Weather Service. Eric is a meteorologist and project manager supporting the National Weather Service, and I believe he works in the headquarters there. Eric works for the Analyze, Forecast, and Support Office in the Forecast Services Division, specifically the Severe Fire, Public, and Winter Weather Services branch. Eric is a winter program coordinator and is responsible for research, operations activities, and also training needs related to winter for field forecasters. Eric, I will pass things over to you, and I appreciate it.
Sure, thanks, Jeremy. Let me just get my slides going. Everybody seeing that okay?
Yes, looks good.
Okay, fantastic. So thanks everyone for having me today. Again, my name is Eric Guillot. I'm the program manager at Weather Service headquarters. And today we're just going to talk about the NWS National Winter Program. We're going to give an update for this year. We're going to talk about a lot of our products. We're going to talk about how they might be used, what they're telling you, and also an update to those products for this coming year. So let me just move this out of the way so I can see this. Okay. So quick overview of the National Winter Program. We're responsible primarily for policy related to NWS winter products and services. And that applies to both the weather forecast offices, the WFOs, and also the national centers. We work to improve those winter products and services, several means, evaluation of new experimental products, which we'll talk about some of those in a little bit here, various collaborative initiatives, and then working with the other weather service headquarters portfolios to try to address those issues with product services and policy. In red there is our vision statement, and we'll come back to this over and over. You'll see a common theme here in this presentation. The delivery of winter forecast services that are collaborative amongst our offices, probabilistic, and also focus on impact-based. So we'll start right with one of our flagship products, and bear with me 1 second as I'm trying to minimize this screen so I can actually see the slides better. The Winter Storm Severity Index is a product that is created by the Weather Prediction Center, WPC, and they're kind of our main national center for winter weather forecasting. And the WSSI, many of you probably heard of this product before, at least I hope you have, because it's been around for several years. It forecasts the severity of community impacts from winter storms throughout the CONUS. We're talking things like tree damage, property damage, transportation impacts, and just general disruptions to daily life. It goes out for 3 days. Days 1 through 3 is what the forecast is valid for in 24-hour intervals. And it updates every 2 hours. It's also incorporating the local snowfall forecast. So this is using model data, but it's also incorporating the actual forecast that the local WFOs are creating for its area. And then the summary graphic, which you see on the right here, is a composite of the maximum impact. So let's just look at those impacts there on the bottom right there. So this is an example from back in 2022 near the Chicago area for a particular winter storm. And you can see that the colors on the bottom are the key, and that describes the impacts that can be expected from this particular storm. So it varies anywhere from winter weather area, that very light blue color, which are just areas where winter weather is expected, into winter driving conditions, drive carefully, all the way up to extreme impacts in purple, which expect substantial disruptions to daily life, and everywhere in between. We have minor, moderate, and major impacts as well. So this gives the public an idea of what to expect from a particular storm, rather than, oh, you're just going to get 12 inches of snow. Okay, but what does that mean to me as a citizen? There's no additional changes this year to this product, but there were many substantial upgrades to it for 2023. That includes an ice climatology was added to this, just general ice accumulation improvements. Also, wind and ice impact methodology, how it decides what the impact's going to be based on how much wind is also incorporated, because once you mix ice with wind, that's what the impacts tend to go up. Some impact level threshold changes, a snow load climatology to try to get an idea of how much snow, the load of the snow, like how much water content is in the snow, is actually atypical for a particular area. And also the parameters flash freeze and ground blizzards have been extended to 72 hours. And we'll talk about those in a minute, what I mean by flash freeze and ground blizzard. And the link at the bottom there, that's where you can view this product at any time. So talking about those components, we were talking about the scale on the right, but the components, there's 6 major components of WSSI. There's ground blizzard, which is the potential for travel-related impacts when strong winds interacting with snow that's already on the ground. Those of North and South Dakota are very familiar with ground blizzards. Flash freeze, which is the potential for a freezing event that happens very quickly during or after precipitation events. Blowing snow, just as blowing snow in general during a particular winter storm, blowing and drifting snow. Ice accumulation, again, impacts to infrastructure, power outages, that sort of thing. Snow load, again, the weight of the snow, potential infrastructure problems there. And then in general, the snow amount, just the snow amount in general from the WFO is forecasting, or the models are forecasting. So newly operational as of this past December is an extension of the WSSI called the probabilistic WSSI. And the goal of this is to forecast the probability of reaching community impacts from winter storms throughout the United States. So if you recall these impact categories here, minor, moderate, major, and extreme, this is the probability of reaching any of those impacts from a probabilistic standpoint. There's 5 different levels of impact probabilities. They're not quite the same as the WSSI. We have snow amount, deterministic WSSI, that is. Snow amount, snow rate, snow load, ice accumulation, and blowing snow. But part of the power of the WSSIP is that it goes out days 1 through 7. It's all model based. And it's updated 4 times a day in 6-hour intervals. So if you look on the right here, this is an example of a probability of reaching the minor impacts category. So you can see for this particular storm, we have a large area where 40% chance of reaching a minor impact. And you can see how it kind of scales away from that center area into lower probabilities of impact for this particular storm. This is valid back in April 2022. Extending that, here's examples of the other categories. On the left, we have a loop of moderate probabilities. In the middle, we have a loop of major probabilities. On the right, we have a loop of extreme probabilities. So again, these are the probabilities of reaching those thresholds we talked about before: moderate, major, and extreme. So on the left, pretty high probabilities, 80, 90, greater than 95% in some areas in North Dakota there, of reaching moderate level impacts. In the middle with the major, you can see it's a little bit lower. Makes sense, right? The chances potentially are not going to be as high of reaching major because it's a little bit more extreme. However, you can still see some pretty large areas of red there to show that there's a large area of reaching that impact level. And on the right is extreme. Now, extreme tends to be pretty historic, and you can see that we have areas in this particular case of up to 40% of reaching extreme. So this storm in April of 2022 was no joke, and you can see how you can potentially use these different probabilities to make more informed decisions. Let's talk about winter storm key messages. This is a product that's put out by WPC, and the point of it is to galvanize partners in the media around a consistent, coordinated message. Usually, they'll issue these for high impact storms that are particularly going to cause disruptions to life and property and travel and/or daily life. They are coordinated between WPC and the WFOs. We want to make sure that messaging is consistent. And on the right there is an example from this past March. You can see WPC in this case, they put up a map of the moderate impacts from WSSIP there, and then kind of expounded upon it. What can people expect in that area with those moderate impacts? They're talking about an impact of winter storm is likely with widespread heavy snow, and again with snow and wind for that, and also forecast changes are anticipated. The links there will direct you directly to the WPC key messages. They do put these out on X and on social media as well. Right now, they're doing key messages for heat. So if you click on them now, it's not going to be anything snowfall related or winter related. And if the links don't work, it's because they don't currently have any key messages out at this time. So what does this mean when we're talking about putting it all together with true IDSS? So I'm going to highlight an example of a heavy snow event back in 2021. It's a couple years old, but it's still very relevant to those products that we just talked about. So this is an example of a winter storm that impacted the upper Midwest. WSSI was messaged across the agency through impact-based decision support services, again, IDSS, and social media from WPC to the local forecast offices. So on the top left is a graphic depicting the key messages of that storm for that day. And it shows the WSSI in there and highlights the widespread impacts to travel infrastructure. To its right is another graphic shared by the Twin Cities WFO. It's showing a local zoom of the WSSI. And they use that to fine tune the expected impacts described in the national key messages graphic for its local region. So kind of a top-down messaging strategy is what we're going for here. The tweet called out major impacts expected from southern Minnesota into central Wisconsin and asking people to flex their travel plans if possible. And it turns out those impacts were realized, as shown in the two graphics on the right, with the Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport canceling up their 60 flights and over 300 accidents reported on I-35. So really trying to, one of Weather Service's goals is to make sure that we're trying to make sure it's a cohesive message from the national standpoint all the way down to a local standpoint. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the modernized heavy snow watch warning criteria. The goal of this project was to improve consistency in winter storm watch warning issuance and public messaging. Every county, every zone, if you will, that Weather Service forecasts for has thresholds on whether or not a winter storm warning or watch should should probably be issued. But it hadn't been visited in a long time. So Weather Service, we created some local teams that worked with our external partners, such as all of you, to establish the changes to that heavy snow criteria. You can see the final result is on the right there. And this first went into a full year of operational use this past winter season. In general, only 1 or 2 inch changes were really recorded here. But even with those small changes, we removed a lot of non-meteorological boundaries. A lot of times you'd see these odd things going on with, a warning was issued versus a warning was not issued because of just the local criteria and where the WFO's responsibility switched to another office potentially. So we tried to get away from that and try to just paint a more cohesive picture and actually make it more science-based. So again, the new criteria was implemented this past winter, but WFOs are continuing to collect feedback from their core partners, and these can be modified quarterly. And they can also still issue winter storm watches or warnings based on impacts alone. So what do I mean by that? Well, basically, if you have a situation where maybe it's an early season event, that's atypical, or maybe it's around a holiday and a lot of people are traveling, and it's kind of on that cusp or even a little bit below winter storm warning criteria, you can still, impacts are probably going to be high. There's a lot of cars on the road, or people aren't ready for this yet. So maybe you want to go with that warning in order to better message that to the public. So here's an experimental product that the Weather Service has been using for a number of years called the Winter Storm Outlook. It displays the probability of reaching those accumulation criteria we showed in the last slide, but actually the probability of reaching that. So again, we're going towards probabilistic space again. It goes out from day 1 through 4, and we're trying to unify both external messaging and internal collaboration in order to make sure that there's consistent winter storm watch issuance across all of the weather forecast offices. This past year, this product did use the aforementioned event-based heavy snow criteria, so that was built into it starting this past season. And you can see on the right there's an example again from 2021 showing the probability of reaching that criteria. So there's quite high probabilities in the Midwest there, all the way down into Texas, greater than 80% of reaching winter storm watch or warning criteria, which lower amounts as you move out left and right from that center axis. In terms of an update for this year, we do have social science focus groups that are planned for this fall. And we're going to invite partners from each NWS region to determine what will this product look ultimately like. Now that the WSSIP is an operational product as of last December, maybe it makes more sense to pull that output into it and use that potentially and create a true days 1 through 7 outlook. Because again, this only goes out to day 4. We don't really have a day 1 through 7 winter outlook like, for example, the Storm Prediction Center does. So that's a possibility. And there's the link there at the bottom to view that product. Let's take a second and talk about snow character maps. These display the consistency of snow. So are we talking about a dry, fluffy snow or heavy, wet snow? And again, we're trying to inform partners and the public regarding the potential hazardous impacts. Obviously, the impacts are going to be different if you have a fluffy snow versus a heavy, wet snow. The Maine WFOs in Gray Maine and in Caribou Maine have been using these graphics for years, and to much success, I might add. The winter program is currently advocating for more WFOs to begin incorporating them on their local website or to use them in partner briefings. If there's something that you're interested in seeing, please reach out to your local WFO. These can be made in the lower 48 states and also in Alaska. This isn't limited to just the CONUS. On the right there is an example of a graphic that Gray Maine made and posted to their social media pages back in March of 2023. And you can see on the bottom, the southern part of Maine and New Hampshire there is where the heavy wet snow was forecasted. And that is where the highest likelihood of power outages is what they were messaging in this particular case, which did actually verify there were quite a few power outages with this case. Now we'll shift to snow squall warnings and IBW tags. Snow squall warnings are a relatively new Weather Service product. It's only been a few years since we've been issuing these. So improvements with this messaging to decision makers and to the public is still ongoing, but it is an operational product. You can see an example of it on the right there. Snow squall warnings are a little different from our other products, which tend to be county-based or zone-based. These are actually a polygon. So a forecaster is actually going to draw the area on the map as to where that snow squall warning is in effect, very similar to severe thunderstorm warning or a tornado warning. More recently, impact-based warning, IBW tags, have been implemented to better convey that snow squall's impact. There can either be no tag, which is considered a general snow squall warning, which indicates snow squall conditions are expected. However, there's mitigating circumstances and societal factors that will reduce the threat to safe travel. For example, maybe it's not over any major roads, or maybe it's overnight, so there's not a lot of people on the roads. In those cases, maybe you don't want to, a forecaster might choose not to have an IBW tag on the actual warning. However, if the forecaster puts a significant tag on there, it indicates that snow squall is going to have a substantial threat to safe travel. This will also trigger a wireless emergency alert, a WEA. And this is something that just changed recently, that they can actually make this distinction. That way we're not overwarning or notifying people that don't necessarily need to be notified for these sorts of things. But if they do get notified now, okay, they need to pay attention and potentially pull over or delay their travel plans. Now we'll talk about something called the probabilistic precipitation portal. This is the central location for the generation of probabilistic snow and liquid precip forecast, trying to provide consistency between WPC and amongst all of our WFOs in the CONUS. This will be the centralized location of the probabilistic precip graphics. You may be familiar with those. They are displayed on the winter web pages of most WFOs these days, and soon to be all of them. However, the graphics are all going to be made centrally on the probabilistic precipitation portal. I don't have a link for you yet because this is not experimental yet. We're shooting for late October, early November to make this experimental. On the right there, you can see an example of what it's going to look like. This is from back in February of this past year over the Rockies. For this particular snowfall event, you can see this is 72-hour accumulation expected. With the key on the far right there, how much snow. This is actually the expected amount of snowfall. So this is the forecast, official forecast from the Weather Service being displayed here. But if you click on any of those points, it'll actually tell you the low end expected amount, which is you should expect at least this much snow. So in this case, 6.1 inches. The expected amount is what the forecast office is actually predicting deterministically, and then the high end amount is the highest you can probably expect in this particular event. So you can see that they're forecasting on the high end. Since the high end is 11.4, the expected amount is 11.1. They're very close. And then we also have exceedance probabilities, the probability of reaching these particular amounts of snow. So you can see 100% for 0.11 and 2 inches. It starts to drop off 4 inches, 6 inches, 8 inches. When you get to a foot for that particular area in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, down to only 3% there. And then our plan is for next winter of 2025, 2026, to have probabilistic ice also being displayed on the PPP. One of the initiatives that Weather Service is exploring right now is the enhanced language for high-end winter storms. Currently, we're soliciting public comment to allow forecasters to add the language of, quote, particularly dangerous situation, or PDS, language to blizzard and ice storm warnings. The public notification statement, the link is on the slides there, was released back in June. The public comment period for this survey, asking the public and partners what they think about this idea, is done on the 10th of September. So please let us know your opinion now. I think we have 6 days left. Love to know your opinion there. You may be familiar with this wording. PDS wording is more commonly found on some severe thunderstorm and tornado warnings. But we need to be careful, right? Because blizzard warning and ice storm warnings are already our top tier, if you will, warnings that Weather Service issues for winter precipitation. And so how much worse can it get with a PDS, right? But at the same time, these are long-term hazards that we're issuing for. A lot of the times we're issuing these, 24, 36 hours. And, there may be a 6 or 8 hour segment in there that maybe that's the worst of the storm. And maybe that's the part where, yeah, it's going to be bad to travel, but those 6 to 8 hours are going to be life-threatening potentially. So maybe that's when a forecast office would quote unquote upgrade to a PDS warning for that time period. And we could even make that potentially trigger a WEA. We're not really sure what we're going to do with this yet. We still haven't even gotten a public opinion yet. And then we have to figure out on our end how we want to implement this. But we need to balance the potential overuse of these with the need to message those life-threatening conditions. So this is a work in progress, but wanted to make you all aware that we are soliciting public comment on this. And the last thing I want to talk about today is just a plug for our winter program partners webinar. Every year we hold a partners webinar in the fall to share updates with partners about our winter weather products and services. We'll cover everything that we talked about today, in addition to other information regarding the coming winter season, including the latest safety and outreach materials, some avalanche weather updates, and also our ice initiatives. It's not yet scheduled, but it's planned for mid-October, and I'll be sure that when we do finally send out the invitation to this, I'll send it to the organizers of this event so they can pass it through this group when it becomes available. And that is my last slide. I think we're good on time here. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Eric. And yeah, we'll now open up questions for everyone, Eric included. But if you have any questions regarding any of the other presentations or directed at any of the other speakers, you can ask those as well through the Q&A chat pod there. We do have 2 already open, so we'll go ahead and ask those, and then any that come in, we'll address those in the meantime. The first one, I believe, goes back to the beginning of your presentation, Eric. It says, is there any kind of app that you can get to use to plan a travel route and get some kind of red, yellow, green indication before you go out regarding road conditions? I know that many show the congestion, but that would be awesome too. Allow people to reroute out of problem areas.
Yeah, so we do not have an app that particularly addresses that concern. We don't have anything that's really focused on just travel. It's really just general societal impact. Travel is part of that, but nothing that specifically focuses on travel like that.
All right, thank you. And the next one is, can the NWS links be sent separately? The Zoom taskbar is covering them. I think for a few folks, they were unable to see some of those links that were at the bottom of your slides. Perhaps if you can get some of those over to me, we can get them sent
Jeremy,
out to the group.
I can send you an email just listing them all out, what we just talked about, and that way everyone can have access to those.
Sounds good. Yeah, and there was quite a few good products that you had there, so I think you'll get a lot of website traffic from that.
And apologies, I don't really use Zoom much. I didn't realize that you guys could see that bar at the bottom too. I thought it was just on my end, so apologies for that.
All right, and we had another one come in. Great presentation. Will you be able to share the science behind the WSSI criterion and thresholds?
Yes, so there is a document called the product description document for the WSSI, and I can share that with you as well, Jeremy. That's open to the public, and that gets into some of that science that this person's referring to.
Okay, all right, appreciate it. Yeah, and we'll make sure we get that out to folks. All right, currently we have no other open questions. Last call before we move into closing here. Are there any questions that anyone has that they want to ask to the group?
Do the raised hands mean anything, Jeremy? Larry, Paul, and Dyer had their hands raised. I wasn't sure what that meant.
Yeah, we're unable to unmute them, so they'll have to ask those questions if they are interested in
the chat. Okay.
Yeah, they'll have to ask those questions through the Q&A pod. So if we don't get any others, I'll go ahead and move on. If we do get some more, we'll address those at the end of the wrap up here. I'm just going to go through a couple of things before we close out, though. First of all, I appreciate all of the presenters coming in, and we covered a wide range of topics today, and that was kind of the point, to cast a wide net. This is our kickoff for the winter weather season. So we're trying to get people engaged. We're trying to get people excited about winter weather, and just get the community aware of some of the things that are going on out there. And also, I truly appreciate all of you who attended, these presentations. It shows that you are engaged. It shows that you're interested in seeing some of this content. And for those of you who really want some of this this information that we put out or that any of the presenters have put out, we'll make sure that we get that over to you. Here on Federal Highways End, though, we do have some additional things that I wanted to cover real quick. You know, coming from a state DOT into federal highway, I was kind of, you know, I was on the other side of things. So it's good to get this this view of some of the opportunities that federal highway and ultimately the Department of Transportation has that are available. And so I try and push these out to everyone as much as I can. I actually skipped the first one. This, you know, here's a couple of grant programs that we feel strongly about. These are a couple of opportunities that we offer money to a wide range of opportunities, but you know, specifically some of this can be allocated and used towards road weather related projects. The first one is a Department of Transportation, you know, so the DOT wide grant opportunity. It's called SMART. It's Strengthening Mobility and Revolutionizing Transportation Grants Program. This is from the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, and it's appropriating $100 million annually between 2022 and 2026 fiscal years. The statement there is to conduct demonstration projects focused on advanced smart community technologies and systems in order to improve transportation efficiency and safety. I have a link there on the slide to the NOFO, but if you Google DOT Smart Grant, that should be the first one that pops up. And then we have actually a funded project there at the bottom at the City of Fort Worth, Texas. They were awarded a Stage 1 grant in 2023 to deploy some sensors in the Fort Worth Smart Port for microweather modeling. It's a lot of money, you know, and if you are interested in learning more about that grant opportunity, I encourage you to check out that link and see how perhaps that could apply to your locality, your state, wherever you're located, and get some information on applying. The second one that I wanted to call out is our AID, which is Accelerated Innovation Deployment Demonstration Program. This one provides up to $10 million in fiscal year 23, and it was actually the amount was up to $12.5 million between 2024 and 2026. That's annually. So looks like my slide went ahead without me. So that one is to accelerate the implementation and adoption of innovation in highway transportation. Again, a very broad statement there and can apply to many things, but with road weather in particular, there's a couple of options there at the bottom that have been funded, specifically in Connecticut with the deployment of AVL units, and also in New Jersey with the launch of their Weather Savvy Roads pilots there in their TMC. So keep that in mind. This one is a federal highway grant, not just a DOT grant, but it's a Federal Highway Administration-led grant program. So the link there on the screen, you can go there and check out the NOFO, and whenever that opportunity does come open, you can get information on how to apply. Some upcoming outreach events. You know, a big part of the road weather program here is outreach. So we do a lot of, you know, small scale events, kind of like these webinars where we're a little bit more hands-on, but we also do some large scale stakeholder events and some roundtables. I make it a point to try and call out as many of these as possible when we do presentations. The next one is actually next week. It's our 2024 annual stakeholder meeting. It's going to be in New Orleans. It's going to be September 10th and 11th, and we'll cover a wide range of topics, anything from winter weather like we're doing today, all the way to tropical weather, visibility, flooding, fire weather. You know, we're going to cover everything that you can think of, primarily because our stakeholders, being the state DOTs and transportation agencies, you experience all of it. So it's not just going to be tied to the winter weather stuff. And then we also have some fall 2024 road weather management roundtables. We try and do these twice a year. They're generally closed to everyone except for the transportation agencies. And it just gives them an opportunity to discuss amongst themselves some of the issues that they're facing out there, and you know, talk about solutions and perhaps you know, bounce ideas off one another. So the dates on that are to be determined, but it's likely going to happen in the November timeframe. That's when things, at least here in headquarters, start to I don't want to say slow down because I don't want to jinx myself, but it's when we have a little bit more time to put to those types of activities. And it'll likely be hosted, virtually via teleconferencing. Our next road weather spotlight series in this webinar series is going to be titled Local Agency Winter Operations, unofficially, I guess, titled. It's going to take place November 6th from 1 to 2:30 p.m. You'll be able to find that registration on the NOCO website, similar to how you did the registration for this webinar today. And I believe NOCO is going to put the link in the chat there if they have it available. But if not, please go to NOCO's website and register for that event. Again, that's going to be November 6th. We're going to focus on local agency winter operations and perhaps some of the innovations that have occurred there. I'd also encourage you, if you are one of those local agencies, or if you know of any who have been, kind of at the forefront of winter operations and you'd like the opportunity to speak on some of your innovations, please reach out to me. I'd like to hear about those. And if we do have the opportunity to put you in the schedule, we will. Lastly, here's my contact information and also some links on how to subscribe to some of the the various things the products that we have out there, as well as NOCO. A lot of information here. Perhaps, take a screenshot or take a picture with your phone. But, I'd like to hear from you. If there's anything that you liked with today's webinar, or if there's anything that interested you with the road weather management program in general, feel free to reach out to me. If you have more ideas, we like to hear them. So with that said, let's see if we have any more questions. Enough, have you seen anything else come in?
Yes, we have some questions in the Q&A pod.
Got it. Let me pull this up real quick. Oh, yeah, we do. All right. Have two questions from Jose. First question is how to identify the roadway in a severe storm. I might be lost on this one. We might have to answer that one directly with Jose. Next question. How are you determining blowing snow and ground blizzard? I think that might be directed towards Eric. Still have Eric on here?
I think Eric isn't available.
All right, well, we will, unfortunately, that attendee is marked as anonymous. We will make sure we get an answer put out, though. We have another question, also directed towards the National Weather Service. Okay. Lyle, we will make sure we get an answer for you. We're taking note of these. Rob Bernard, State 511 site and apps could help with travel route planning. Rob, I agree with that. And we try and promote those as much as possible. Currently on the road weather page, and this might, this is always subject to change, but we have a list of all those 511 websites posted on the Federal Highway road weather page. All right, looks like question-wise, there's no questions, just statements. All right, well, I appreciate everyone's time. Like I said, we're going to have more of these events. We do them on a schedule right now. We're doing them every other month. So the next one will be in November. So I appreciate your time. I'm going to go ahead and close this out here. But if you do have any other questions, you got my contact information up there. So do feel free to reach out to me. And with that said, we'll end things.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you everyone for attending today. And on behalf of NOCO and our presenters, thank you for joining us and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.